preventative methodologies that are being practiced to the person who can't afford these?
Well, I would say when people are choosing places or sites to construct houses, we encourage them to choose areas that do not have a lot of bushes around, because we know the bushes are also hiding places for mosquitoes. So when you choose a site that does not have those hiding places for mosquitoes, definitely you'll keep away from mosquitoes, and it protects you from getting malaria. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the disease itself. Back in the day, if someone felt a temperature increase in their body and then had some joint pains, chances were that it was going to be malaria diagnostics. Today, it's a thin line between malaria and infection. So could you please give us a revision in terms of malaria, its symptoms, and how it can be detected?
All right, so like all other diseases or illnesses, malaria has classical presentations. So the most striking presentation is a fever. So the fever specific for malaria is intermittent. Intermittent means it's present at a certain moment and then it drops. So it has that pattern. So the fever is also associated with moments or periods of cold and periods of a patient feeling hot, and then periods of sweating. So this is only specific for malaria. So other symptoms for malaria are a headache, which is generalized, can be associated with dizziness. A patient can present with vomiting, nausea. They could have abdominal discomfort, diarrhea, and general body pains. Yeah, so those are some of the striking features that would help you to diagnose malaria clinically.
Okay, so I have also had the pleasure of experiencing the malaria testing kit. You can pick it up from the pharmacy and do self-testing. How reliable is that diagnostic in actually eradicating malaria at the earliest stages?
Well, the rapid test kit that is sold in pharmacies and those stores that sell laboratory consumables, it looks out for antibodies that fight against, that respond to malaria. Remember, when we fall sick, our body tries to fight disease. So we have soldiers in the body, the white blood cells that produce antibodies. So when you have malaria parasites in your blood, the antibodies will be generated against the malaria parasites as an immune response. Yeah, so sometimes the immune response delays. You may take a rapid malaria test when your body has not yet developed antibodies against malaria. So that will be a false negative result. So it is not as reliable as the microscopic test, which we call the blood slide, which employs a thick and thin film that will identify the species of malaria and also quantify how many parasites a patient has. So these the microscopy test is more reliable than the rapid diagnostic test when it comes to diagnosing malaria in laboratory.
It speaks into the type of parasites that you have, and also speaks into how much of it is in your body to then guide in terms of treatment. So let's talk about treatment. Over the time, there's been changes in treatment. There used to be quinine, which used to be very reactive to so many people, causing them after effects of that treatment. Then came the Fancida that you mentioned earlier, very bitter in the tablet version. But with the evolution of treatment, how easy has it been? No, not easy, but how efficient and effective has it been in treatments of malaria?
Well, when it comes to treatment of malaria, yeah, like you said, we've had an evolution. Yeah, we started with quinine, which has a high toxicity profile. So quinine was phased out. It used to be the first line of treatment for severe malaria, but because of its toxicity profile, the side effects, it was phased out, and currently we're using artesunate for severe malaria. Now, when it comes to uncomplicated malaria, still quinine was in use, but we would use the tablets. But the tablets are as bad as the IV medication. They're actually worse. Yeah, so a lot of research has been going on, and new molecules have been developed. We have the ACTs, artemisinin combined therapy-based drugs, where we have lumefantrine, and we have lumefantrine, and okay, we have lumefantrine. We have artesunate. Artesunate is ACT also. So we also have DPs, the dihydroartemisinin, and piperaquine based malaria therapy medicinal products, where we have diocotexin and p-alaxin. So when it comes to simple malaria or uncomplicated malaria, the first line of treatment are the DPs, where you have diocotexin and p-alaxin. These are the common brands that we have on market. Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the anti-malaria drugs. What are they exactly? What is their duty? And at what point are people meant to be taking anti-malaria drugs?
Well, anti-malaria drugs should be taken by all patients who present to you with manifestations of malaria, like we mentioned, fever, headache, and what have you. So if a patient presents to you with those manifestations, you go ahead to carry out tests so that you can confirm your diagnosis. So every patient that has a positive malaria test qualifies to take antimalarials. But as a clinician, you have to do your assessment so that you grade the severity. Yeah, because a patient with uncomplicated malaria will require a treatment different from that of a patient with severe malaria. So usually we prefer using tablets for patients with uncomplicated malaria, and we do IV medications for patients with severe malaria. But eventually, after the IV medications, still patients have to take the oral medication so that they can kill those persisting parasites in blood.
Okay. Dr. Segane, the notion has always been clear in the medical world. Early detection is early prevention, and early protection at that. When it comes to the statistics here in Uganda, what is the attention to dealing with malaria at the earliest possible detection?
All right. So we usually encourage people to visit health facilities whenever they start feeling unwell. You don't wait for things to get blown out of proportion before you visit a health facility. So when you get a simple headache, a simple fever, just run to hospital so that you get assessed by a medical practitioner, and then you get treated before you cross the line from uncomplicated to severe malaria.
But on that note, could you highlight how crucial diagnostics is in that element? Because there's so many doctors, general doctors, you rush to the clinic and they'll ask you for signs and symptoms. How are you feeling? Do you feel this? Yes, no, yes, no. And it's upon that assessment that they will write you drugs without even going through the diagnostics of it, the laboratory.
Well, I would say they do it wrongly, because the standards of practice require testing and treating. It is evidence-based practice. Yeah, because there are so many other illnesses that present like malaria.
Yes.
Yeah, because a bacterial infection could present like malaria. So if you don't
chickenpox can present like
absolutely.
Malaria.
So if you don't go ahead to carry out a test, you may empirically prescribe medication to a patient who has a diagnosis different from what you think they have, and you'll be wasting medication, and that is the cause of resistance to our medicines in the country. Okay. Wrong prescription of medication for wrong diagnosis. Speaking
of prescriptions, let's talk about self-medication. Okay. Someone will feel the symptoms and they will, in their mind, they'll detect that it's malaria, they'll go do over-counter administration and they'll take it. However, that I know has a downside, self-medication in the fight against malaria. Let's talk about that.
self-medication, buying over-the-counter drugs. It can come in so many ways. Sometimes you get patients coming to hospital only to carry out tests because they know where to get the drugs from. Because they've come to learn that when you buy drugs from a pharmacy, they are cheaper.
Of course they are cheaper.
So when someone comes with a prescription in a pharmacy, it's allowed for them to be given what? Medications. But self-medication without testing is absolutely wrong. It's discouraged, strongly discouraged from people in our community.
Okay. All right. So as we commemorate World Malaria Day, how significant is this day in actually eradicating malaria, but also creating as much broad awareness about the disease?
All right. The World or Global Malaria Day is held every 25th of April to raise awareness to the people in public about the global effort to eliminate and eradicate malaria from our communities. So like I said, the burden for malaria in the world, in Uganda and the world at large, is very high. It is costly for the government to, advance those huge budgets of money trying to treat malaria and offer help to people that are affected. So World Malaria Day, besides bringing together international agencies and research institutions to discuss the progress of the Global Malaria Action Plan, which was established by World Health Organization, we know that the components of a Global Malaria Action Plan are control, elimination, and research into development of new products, medicinal products that treat malaria, and also preventive measures that protect our people from getting malaria. World Malaria Day also provides international organizations and scientists an opportunity to pass on information, new information, coming from new trends of research to our people in the community, through health education programs, community activities, and charity.
Okay, all right. So in conclusion, a word of wisdom to, communities and society by and large as we fight this malaria disease in Uganda.
I want to appeal to our people in Uganda that we have hope about eradicating malaria. Number one, it is preventable and it's curable. So if we are to observe all the measures that we've been mentioning, I'm very sure at some point, because World Health Organization said 2050 as the year when malaria will be eradicated.